Hello, my name is Dr. Carl Candlepun, and this is the fourth official episode of my Lost podcast. This episode features spoilers for up to and including Season 1, Episode 4 of Lost. If you have not seen at least that far into the show, I recommend you do so first before proceeding with this podcast. But without further ado, let's begin. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Dr. Candlepun's Lost podcast. I am Chris Youth, otherwise known as Dr. Candlepun, and with me...
I am Mike Youth, also known as Nurse Flickerson.
So today we're talking about the fourth episode of the series called Walkabout, which is kind of a big deal because a lot of people that got hooked on the show, even more recently in the streaming era, this is the episode that hooked them for reasons that I'm sure make sense to you. I guess the first thing I want to ask is, do you remember, and it's okay if not, but do you remember that big reveal at the end of this episode? Do you remember back in the day, like, that hitting you?
In watching this time, right? Like, I knew that I was going to be looking for that. But it actually took me a minute to realize how it played out, how it was revealed again, right? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't new to me. I knew that it was going to happen, but the way that it happened was still caught me off guard at first, right? So, yeah, I remember being originally, I remember going like, whoa, what? And I wasn't ready for it. I really wasn't ready for it, especially with the lead up to the phone conversations and everything else that happened. We don't want to get into it yet, but the matter of fact, the phone conversation that he was having.
You can, yeah. I really don't.
Okay, so the phone conversation where I assumed he was talking to, his girlfriend or, maybe even an estranged spouse, I guess, at some point. It seemed a lot to me like he was saying, like he was getting his life in order and letting this person that he was in a relationship with, or maybe trying to repair a damaged relationship with, let him know, like, hey, I'm doing this thing, just so you know, like after this, maybe, and to find out that it appeared he was talking to a 1-900 operator. I'm like, okay, that threw me for a loop. And then, so looking back on it, to have that reveal followed by the reveal that here he is, not capable of going on a walkabout. It was shocking.
Yeah. Well, that's what I like about. It kind of goes back a little bit to what I was saying in previous weeks about like subverting the expectations of stuff. It's a little different with Locke because he didn't really. I mean, I guess you could say he did. I was gonna say he doesn't really fit like as much of an archetype as some of the other ones, like the drug addicted rock star, the hero doctor, bigoted redneck. He was just kind of like a mystery, like what's his deal. But like with this episode, when he like throws the knife and you're like, oh god, like this guy's a badass. Like he knows exactly what they need to do. He knows how to hunt these boar down. And then like with each flashback, like at first he's like a colonel, like it seems like.
Yeah.
Like and then it's like, oh no, he's just playing pretend.
Yes.
And then like the more it goes on, like the phone operator, like you said, you're like, oh, this guy's actually like really pathetic. And then of course the final reveal, the most shocking one, is that like that almost makes it, instead of pathetic in the way that you were thinking, it's like, oh, like you actually feel bad for him.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you felt bad for him before that, and that would be reasonable too. Sorry.
No. I was just thinking, like, going back all the way to the, his boss, I guess, and the way he was treating him, and I'm just like, I kind of got the feeling like, oh, you're making fun of a war hero, like you're just some young, boss, and you got this guy that everybody looks up to because his military service, and you're treating him like garbage because you don't respect that. That I kind of got that, and you're right. And then as things start to get revealed, and it's like, oh, I mean, that was like the equivalent of like, Dungeons and Dragons. They're just giving him this title type thing, and then they'll kind of going back to what you said about him not really fitting anything, but it answered a lot of questions as to why here he survives a plane crash, and now he can walk. He's not paralyzed anymore, and flashing back to the way he was acting, it seemed kind of weird at first. It's like, yeah, this dude does not care that plane crashed.
Yeah.
He is living his best life. Like, he's like, all the things I've been studying because people told me I couldn't do this and I couldn't do that because I was confined to a wheelchair. Well, look out, because now I have all that information and all that training, and I can walk. Yes.
Well, so before moving on from that big twist and talking about the other stuff of the episode, I do. I'm hoping this isn't something that is kind of talked to death, because I did say in our pilot episode that I would try and avoid that. But some of the stuff, like when Randy's the boss at work, he's like talking about like, oh, you're going on a walkabout. He's like, so you go around gathering up supplies, hunting. He's like, on foot. And like he says that. And I mean, this is stuff that you probably caught this time because I know you remembered the big twist.
Yep.
But I mean, that stuff, again, I know you probably don't remember too well 20 years ago, but like that's stuff that I imagine went over your head.
Yes.
But now rewatching it with understanding what the twist is, you're like, oh shit. Like,
He's literally taunting him. Yeah. Making fun of him.
But, and the other thing, and this you may or may not have caught this time. Did you see in that phone conversation when he's talking to the operator, he has like a machine on his nightstand and it's like on for like the first bit of the conversation and he turns it off while he's talking to her?
I seem to remember that, but I don't remember how I felt about it. If I knew what it was, I'm not. You're making me remember kind of where I'm thinking it was like some type of stimulation type machine, maybe.
That's exactly what it was.
Is that what it was? Okay. Yeah.
But so it was another hint as to what his deal was. I mean, and also the obvious fact that you never see him on his feet.
But dude's super lazy for a woodsman.
Yeah, I think the next big thing, almost as big potentially, Locke has a run-in with the monster, and he gets a good look at it. Any thoughts or recollection of your original thoughts on that?
Yeah, I didn't have any like real big reveals to 20 years ago. But at a basic level, I remember thinking that, okay, here this guy was paralyzed. He had all these plans. He was tired of people trying to hold him back. Plane crashes. Now he's got his legs. Everyone's terrified of what this monster is. He sees this thing face to face, and he came out of the woods like they had an agreement. Like, I just remember thinking to myself, like, once again, this dude's living his best life. Like, whatever this thing saw in him, whether it took pity on him, whether it saw, like, this dude's just different, I don't know. But I'm like, even the most terrifying part of what's going on for these folks at the backside of this plane crash, this dude, it ends up being a positive for him. So yeah, it was kind of shocking.
Well, and you talk about it being a positive for him. I'm wondering if you caught something that I do think a lot of people miss, including me, I think, for a long time. You know how Locke at the end comes out of the jungle with the dead boar. Did you pick up on the fact that the monster killed that boar?
That is 100% my recollection of that instance. Like he met it. Not only did it not kill him, gave him exactly what he went into the woods for. Yeah.
So because like he's hunting the boar by himself by that point. He hears it like start to run, and he like starts to go after it, and then that's when you hear the monster, and you hear the boar scream, cry out, and die. And then that's when him and the monster have the face-to-face interaction. Yeah. And then the next time you see him, he's coming out of the woods with the dead boar. Yep. So that in and of itself is interesting. Not only did it spare Locke, I mean, one way to read what happened, I'm not saying if this is accurate or not, but is that, like, not only did it spare him, it kind of let him, I mean, you kind of already said that. Yeah. It kind of gave him what he wanted.
Yep. Okay, take that back to your people and show them what you've done.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very, very interesting. Does that trigger any thoughts? Because I know you remember what the monster looks like, but as we've talked about before, you don't remember the nature of what it is. Does that, like, get wheels spinning in any kind of direction?
wish it did.
Yeah.
I wish it did. I'm no pun intended or all puns intended. I'm just as lost on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I will say this though. I don't want to get too proud of myself. But whether it's age and the old man factor hitting me, or the numerous conversations that we've had about the way that you look at storylines and movies and characters, um, I just already get a sense I'm going to get so much more out of this than I did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And so even though that's not, doing anything for me at the moment,
Right.
I just have a feeling like I'm not going to miss all the stuff I missed last time.
Yeah. Well, like I said last week, like, yeah, I feel like you kept saying like, oh, I don't get as deep into it as you, but like I said last week, seems so far like you are. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to back up to the beginning of the episode and maybe go a bit more in chronological order from this point. This is just another small funny thing. I keep pointing out these little things every week. But do you remember at the beginning of the episode when they hear something rustling around in the fuselage, and like Jack has his tiny little flashlight and he's like trying to look in, and then Sawyer's got his big ass flashlight, and it just
he's put some light on this thing or something like that.
Yeah. It always makes me laugh because to me it feels like very clear, like oh, look at your tiny little thing. I got this massive,
trying to emasculate it.
So yeah, and then this episode establishes that there are boar on the island. I don't know if you made the connection, but you remember in last week's episode, something was chasing Michael through the woods, and then before he came out and saw Sun.
Yes.
Yeah, like so that was the boar. Like it makes the same sound, and now you know what that was.
Yep.
Okay, so another thing that I thought I would poke your brain about is Jack goes and sits with Rose. Seems like Rose is kind of in shock about her husband or just the crash in general. It is sitting alone on the beach. Jack sits with her for a while, and then she starts talking to him, and he offers her the chance to say some words about her husband, and then she says what she says. Any thoughts on that?
I don't know how I felt 20 years ago about that, but I know how I felt when I watched it this time is that twins are that way. Like when they say they can just feel that their twin passed. Moms, I mean, I can't tell you the number of times where professionally, someone was lost or whatever, and a mom said, I knew the minute, I knew the minute it happened. I felt it, that type of thing, right? And equally, when you whether it was in my professional career or watching some of the real life crime shows that I hearing moms and sometimes dads, but a lot of times it's moms say, I would know if they were gone. Like I would know if they were gone, and I don't feel it. And there's always this part of me that says those type of things can be said in a moment of desperation, like in denial, right? I think a lot of people want to attribute that to denial. I can tell you I've been party to those things being 100% factual and accurate in the end. And so when in the show, when she said that, it kind of struck me, just how almost like how foolish Jack seemed to her. Like you said, like why would I want to say something at a memorial? Like I don't know those dead people. My husband's fine. So I found that very interesting.
So you then, I take it, think she's right. Like you think that he's still out there, and maybe some other people from the tail section.
Yeah. Like I thought it then. Now I don't recall thinking that anyone else from the tail section, right? But for whatever reason, I took note of that back then. Like I said, maybe it was just professional, personal experience, but I took note and like, we're gonna meet her husband later, something along those lines. So, now, be it my age or be it 20 years in passing, I don't know if that's real, but I got the same feeling when I watched it this time. Like, I feel like we should meet that guy later.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, so then shortly after that, like immediately after that, Jack sees something interesting. Any recollection of what that's about?
I guess I won't spoil it if I say I know who that is, or would I?
Well, so,
Yeah,
if that's all you're saying, that doesn't spoil anything. This kind of changes this then, but since I know you know something about what Jack's seeing, but did you notice the shoes? You don't see them at all the first time Jack sees him on the beach, but then the second time he sees him, which kind of leads him into where John comes out from, where Locke comes out from. You see the shoes kind of disappear into the jungle, and did you notice them?
Were they by themselves?
No.
You made it sound like I was supposed to have seen shoes.
Like he's like peeking out of the jungle, and then when it cuts to him, like he immediately goes in, and like the last thing to disappear are the shoes.
Go out of frame. Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't know if you noticed them.
Yeah. Now that you said that, I'm reliving that. Yeah.
So what did you notice?
I didn't notice anything particular other than dress shoes.
No. Your mind.
My mind's playing tricks on me.
Yeah, your mind is recreating it. The reason I'm pointing out the shoes is because they're not dress shoes. They're white tennis shoes.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Now I'm having a flash forward to boot.
Oh yeah,
maybe. That's my mind's manufacturing that. Yes, now I got you.
Okay.
For some reason, my mind manufactured almost shiny loafers with some shiny metallic thing, but now that you said that, completely didn't fit. But I believe there's a part in which later on it fits perfectly.
It's just one of those things that makes it even more odd. Like, who the fuck is this guy in a suit? Also, why the hell is he wearing white tennis shoes? And I just wondered if you noticed it, because I don't think I noticed it.
Yeah,
in that initial.
And then I said I did, but I didn't.
Yeah. Something I forgot to point out about the twist. I was going to point out how in the last episode, Charlie's pushing the wheelchair and be like, "Hey, well, look at the bright side. At least whoever this belonged to is better off than we are." Yeah. It's foreshadowing.
Yes and no.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he probably think. I mean, he would say he is.
He definitely say he was,
but not in the way. Yeah, Charlie meant.
Yeah.
So the last thing on my list, I talked in the pilot about how sometimes there are things that people call plot holes in the show where I kind of disagree. Like, okay, there are other ways to look at it. That you're kind of just giving up and assuming it's a plot hole when there are other interpretations to be had. And there's a small one in this episode, and that is where Kate tells Jack that she's a vegetarian before she goes on the hunt. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
Yeah. And so some people point to is like, well, in the flashback, in her first not her first, maybe it was her first, I don't know. In her flashback in the last episode, when the farmer finds her and he brings her in, he feeds her, she's eating eggs and bacon.
Yeah.
So people are like, that's reasonable. Like, oh, that's a plot hole because, we just saw her eat that. Here's why I think, like, or no, I mean, like, do you think maybe you have a reason that would it be a plot hole?
That it wouldn't be?
Yeah.
Yeah, because people typically aren't born vegetarians. I mean, they make a decision, they make a life change. I mean, it'd be like if there was a flashback and Hurley was ripped. It's like, yeah, those two things can be real. Like maybe Hurley suffered an injury. He used to be a professional weightlifter. I mean, it's like, she probably at some point decided she would become a vegetarian.
Well, exactly. I mean, I did not prep you for that question. You had no time, and you already had that. What I would add to it, having had more time to think about it, is that that first flashback in that episode was months earlier, because you remember months go by before she tries to leave and then gets arrested. In those months, she's living on a farm, presumably taking care of animals. Maybe in those months, she was like, "Oh, I don't feel right about eating this."
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So
that's even better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're sitting there eating that bacon, and then the next thing you know, you're cleaning the pig out of the next order of bacon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cleaning the pin.
Yeah. So it's like I said, that's a very small example of something people point to and say is a plot hole. But it's a good initial example of what I want to do with those.
I think too, part of that comes from, I think the people who like to point out the obvious, like oh, nobody's going to be able to pull that off. Well, most likely nobody's going to be able to pull that off. Yes, that's a pretty fantastical event that just happened in that scene, and some people get so into being like, oh, this is so unrealistic. Oh, you don't say. It's Hollywood, and that person doesn't do those things unless they're Keanu Reeves. It's I think there's something about that with people where they want to be the person that finds those plot holes that they're just like, oh, editing must have been terrible, or somebody must have really crapped the bed on this day when they were looking for the mistakes to clean up, and I think a lot of times it wasn't a mistake at all.
Yeah, and once again, I don't want to insult people that just get something out of stuff like that I don't.
I'll do that,
but but I think sometimes it comes across almost like there's like a sense of superiority there of like they messed up. Like I'm smart. I caught it. Like I said, I'm not saying that's the case all the time. I think,
I think the more you do that, though, the more you lend for somebody to have that opinion of you, right? Mm-hmm. Which is the easy answer to that. It's the same way, like on Sunday when I like to yell at the NFL players about what they could have done on that play that they messed up. I'm quite aware that at no point was I anywhere close to being on their level at football or most other things sports wise. So I understand the irony of it, but I also understand from having been in the arena and instructing and all this other stuff that's the beauty of watching somebody perform, no matter what it is that you like watching people perform. It is easy to pick out the shortcomings and the faults if you're educated on what you're watching, because you are sitting there with nothing. You're in no danger. Your mind doesn't have to move fast. All you have to do is react to what you see as a positive or negative. And I think that happens in those instances as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, so it's funny that you were talking about like people getting real critical, like, oh, that's not realistic and stuff, and almost like a not willing to suspend disbelief. There was somebody in our pilot screening, which if you guys watched pilot part 2, you got to meet some of the people that attended that and that talked about the episode afterwards. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to record that for the pilot, but as of last night, we screened the next episode, Tabula Rasa, and we were able to record our discussion about it. But anyways, there was somebody that attended that pilot screening that that was not a fan of the pilot, and a lot of the reasons that he voiced were kind of along those lines. He didn't find it realistic, which I could respect completely. It's hard for me to be objective about it because, I saw it so young, and I've grown up with it like all the times. I mean, at the same time, there are other parts of the show, specifically later on, that I was like a huge fan of when I was younger, that I have become more critical of as I've gotten older, and vice versa. There were things that I was like kind of more bored by, that like now that I'm older, I very much appreciate what was being done there. So that's to kind of to be arguing back and forth with myself. On the one hand, it's like, okay, I'm so attached to this pilot, like maybe I just can't see what he's seeing. But on the other hand, my opinion has been able to alter or shift over the years. So I don't know. It's just a difference of taste and preference. But yeah, he had a lot of interesting things to say, and he didn't come back for this next one. I don't know if he is going to come back in future weeks. But I wouldn't mind having that perspective, like in these group discussions that we're doing. But anyways, that brings me to it's our fan mail section, but you guys still aren't sending in emails yet.
It's going great.
It's still early days, but I know we will have one for next week because somebody did send in one about the next episode. But yeah, I really want you guys to be part of this. Like I was saying last week, it's the discussion that around Lost. That's a huge part of why I love the show. That's why you and I are doing this. But the more people we can get involved in that discussion, I think the better it will be. to kind of hammer that point again, but in a way that I really haven't before. Like, if there's things that we say in these podcast episodes that like you have something to say, like oh, you guys didn't think about this, or you guys saying that made me think of this, and you know, what do you think? Whatever. If you guys have any kind of response to anything that we say, please do send that in, and yeah, we will feature you on the podcast. It can be in written form. It can be an audio clip that you send, or it can even be a link to like a video message. All of those things you can send to the email address dr.candlepun@gmail.com, or as far as the written form, feel free to just comment it on the video version of this episode if that's how you are experiencing this. Which brings me to the one thing that I want to address in our fan mail section of this episode. It was a comment left by somebody on our Pilot Part 2 episode, which was just released a couple of nights ago. They were responding to the introductions of some of these people that attended the screening. And yeah, basically this person, username Taj Raheen, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, they said, Lost has such an uphill battle due to the pre-planted misconceptions for new viewers. I hope everyone will enjoy the show. Yeah, like that really became clear to me in hosting this screening, more so than it already was. Pretty much every person that was there that hadn't seen the show before had heard those things about the reputation, and most of them were familiar with the big misconception that Ben referred to in his email in our pilot episode,
which Taj seems to be quite aware of as well.
Yeah. Like the introduction interview that comes to mind, like reading that comment, is like Lucas. Like they all kind of referred to it, but like Lucas said, I asked him to try and keep an open mind and not, you know, try and gauge for himself as the show goes on, whether or not the quality holds up as it goes. But and he said, yeah, I won't hold it in my heart, but you know, if I have to fight you in the end, like, you know, I will. And I do think multiple of those people, they do have that expectation on some level that at some point this is probably going to go downhill.
We'll go on this date, but I know it's going to end.
And I do think that can be tough to overcome and start, because it's like, I think going into these early episodes with that in the back of your mind, it almost primes people to be looking for the negative stuff to begin with. Like, okay, what are the signs that this at some point is gonna not be quality stuff? And like Taj said, that sucks. It sucks that Lost now has that uphill battle to fight, whereas before it wouldn't have, or if it had aired in a different way, I don't think it would have.
You know, Taj's comment, it kind of hit me. It's like, sadly enough, it's almost like you can tell a true fan of Lost by the fact that that's their number one concern. Right? Like that's their number one fear for new viewers, is that they've been tainted with this thought process that is, it's more than fair to say, it's not even a really a difference of, it's fair to say it's inaccurate if you really get into the show and you watch it and you're a true fan and you take the time to understand, like to your point, so many things that people would say are left unanswered. No, they were answered, maybe even repeatedly. You just, for whatever reason, missed it. Now, if you were watching it originally, as we've discussed, you could have missed it because you weren't there on one night and you missed an episode, and you may never recover. Missing one episode, you may never recover these holes that you think exist, because you don't have a context for them anymore. You've lost it.
Or even if let's say you didn't miss an episode, if you're only watching the one time they air and it's spread out over 5.5 years, then like you're not gonna remember. Like even if you saw every episode, you're not gonna remember every little detail. You're not gonna connect this little piece over here way back when to this new context. And so I just adding to what you're saying, like there are so many ways that watching it that way back in the day could contribute to people not fully grasping what was revealed.
I think, when I think about like people making YouTube channels and things like that too, I think that's also kind of a favorite thing of mine, and I know it exists. I haven't really dug into any, lost podcasts or channels or any of that. Um, but I guess if you are one of those people, the fascinating thing about the effort that folks put into stuff like this is that if you were one of those folks who thought like, oh, there's so many holes, you could get on several channels and you could at least make a better educated opinion after watching the amount of time and effort that somebody has put into
Yeah.
explaining things to people who literally didn't get them and is not going to go back and watch the show again to give themselves an opportunity to change. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I do have something to say about it because it's funny. On one level, I obviously agree because I've literally made YouTube videos with that exact goal. But what what I've become more conscious of over my YouTube career, if you can even call it that, is I don't want to be someone that is catering to the intellectually lazy, as you've referred to in previous weeks. I don't want to be the person that somebody that just kind of casually watch the show and like, I didn't get it. I don't want to put the thought in to figure it out for myself. Let me go have this explained for me, because a lot of these things, they are more subjective, and a lot of the things that I can offer in ways of explanations and interpretations, they're the conclusions I've reached based on the way that I've looked at the pieces, and a lot of it is, some of it isn't. Some of it is more like, this is definitely what happened.
Yes.
But some of it, or a lot of it, I would say, there's a lot more subjectivity there to play with, and you can kind of come to your own conclusions,
right.
As long as it doesn't contradict the facts. So that's kind of what I try to make my channel more like. I try to present all the evidence. I try to show why certain things can't be true, and why and then I kind of go into my conclusions based on my perspective. But I want my videos, and that's what I like this podcast to be, is to be more of an invitation for people to think deeply, to think more deeply for themselves,
right.
rather than, it's like what I said in our introduction episode. I don't want to tell you what to think.
Yes.
I'll point out things that you might have missed, as far as like, oh, here's this, and maybe here's what I think about it. But the whole idea is that I want you to think about it,
right,
and I want them to think about it. So taking that back to what you were saying, like, yeah, I don't love the idea of people refusing to do that, or just being too lazy to do that, and then just getting on a YouTube channel and be like, explain it for me.
Yes, and I think there's two different things we're talking about there for that very reason. And I think it's a great point that you bring up. Is I would equate what you're talking about, which is not what I meant by that. I would equate that to like, I want to know about religion, but instead of reading the Bible, I know you've read the Bible, so you're like, oh, what's this God all about, and what does that verse mean? Well, I mean, you could miss the boat 50 different ways if you're not going to put any effort into searching those things out yourself. And I use religion on purpose, but I mean, it really could be anything. It could be your favorite book series or anything else. If you just want somebody else's opinion, you're past the point of lazy.
No, I love what you said, and I love the religion part of it. Like, but yeah, like I would extend it to just values. Like so many people are just like, oh, well, I'm really passionate about hating this thing right now, because that's what's fashionable to be outraged about.
Super popular to be mad about.
Yeah, instead of just like, oh, it's like people are looking for people to tell them, well, I want to be a good person. I want to be perceived as a good person. What should I do to be? What's the right thing for me to think? What's the right value? What are the right values for me to have? Whereas I really wish, especially like this shit, I'm getting to the age where I sound like a fucking these kids these days. But like, it does feel like these days people, and yeah, not just the kids, but like they don't ask, like they don't search internally for like why do I think this is wrong? Why do I feel this way about it? Why does this matter to me? Because those are the valuable questions to ask. That's how you figure out who you are. And yeah, I don't know.
I'd piggyback on that, and I will tell you that frankly, it's ruining old wisdom. Like the world we live in is even ruining old wisdom. I talk to people who are older than me, and potentially someone I would say is wiser than me, and a lot of times people, in a very lazy way, they parrot whatever's being said on social media, on the news, on whatever. It's like take hot button topic A that everyone's talking about, and everybody will essentially say the same thing. Like they hear something they agree with at a surface level, and then they're just like, this is the problem with America today. This is why, and just like, man, how long did it take you to come to that conclusion, right? It's like there's always been lots of problems, and it could be this huge discussion, but we've all just agreed to repeat this one thing that everybody agrees they don't like. It's super boring, first and foremost, and then it as talkative of a person as I am. That's like a quick way to just kind of shut me down. It's like, yep, got it, heard that.
Yep. Yeah.
No real interest there.
Yeah. That's kind of tying it back into the religion thing. Like organized religion specifically, like it seems to me a lot of people, it's like, well, this is what I was told to believe. And I'm told if I don't believe it, then I'm in a lot of trouble. And so, yep, like this is what I believe. And the thing, I think there's a lot of value to be found in faith and in religion and you believing something.
So long as you're not having faith based off of somebody else's faith.
Right. Or when somebody tells you to believe, like ask yourself why you believe it. Like, what value am I getting? What are the dangers in me believing what I believe? That's another big theme of this show. I don't think it's much of a spoiler, but as the show goes on, the show does explore the values of faith and the dangers of it, the perils of it, of blind faith specifically. But I think faith, religion, belief, those are very valuable things that a lot of people lack in a lot of ways, or miss the value of. But I think we all need to be cognizant of, like, okay, where is this leading me? You need to be careful about
not just falling into line because that's what you think.
Yeah, you're supposed to do. Or being able to write off somebody because they don't share those beliefs, or whatever else. Or
I would just tell you on that like when you talk about like my feeling of being blessed on top of blessed, I certainly remember being young and your dad, our siblings, learning about religion and a lot of traditional things, and like you sin, you're going to hell, that type of stuff. I will tell you, becoming a young man all the way into my adulthood, right down to my preacher now and the people that I talk about faith in my circles, super intellectual and studied, and they talk. There's certainly some hard and fast rules to religion, right? But they talk like we're talking about this podcast. They talk about religion. Like if you say something, like you'll not correct me, but you'll say, "Oh, it's interesting that you think that about that. Did you consider this?" It gives you an opportunity to check your own biases and do whatever. Right, I'm telling you, these folks do the same thing with the religious side of things, and it's just like, man, I can still be wrong, and that's okay. Or they're confirming, yeah, you're probably right about that, but did you know this? And not to get off in the weeds about it, but like I have specific Bible verses that I've like had a conversation about. I'm like, wow, I may have been way off on the context of that particular verse all these years based on that. And no one was trying to change my mind. They were just like, oh, did you realize that I can completely see where you would have got that? Did you realize that verse was referencing something that happened two stories or two books back in the Bible? I'm like, no. Like, oh yeah, go look up this verse. And then when you draw those conclusions, like, wow, all right, so yeah, it does completely change the context. So anyway, so I find it very interesting.
Yeah. But okay, I think that's everything that we have for Walkabout. We will be back next week for the 5th episode, which is called White Rabbit.
Hope to see you next week.
I would now like to give a special thank you to the currently active donors. These include candidate number 90, Ben Ward, candidate number 108, Jeffrey Winslow, candidate number 69, Brian Phillips, candidate number 32, Chuck Boyd, and candidate number 341, Hans. If you too would like to become a candidate, you can do so for as little as $1. One-time or recurring donations can be set up on Ko-fi.com/Candlepun or Patreon.com/Candlepun. A donation of any amount will get you credited in this podcast and added to the candidate wall, which will be displayed in all video versions of the episodes of this podcast from that point forward, even once you're no longer donating. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the multiple people that have donated equipment and resources that are used in the production of this podcast. These include Mary Mullins, Brandon Huth, Charles Huth, William McMahon, and Charlene McMahon. Until next time, namaste and good luck.
Uh-oh.
To like this video, click the thumbs up. Or, if there has been an incursion by the hostiles, click the thumbs down. To leave feedback, enter a comment below. To be notified when more videos arrive, click the circle and then select the notification bell. To view previous content from this channel, click either of the two boxes.